Hello there and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the community experts about their life journeys and learn from each other. And today we have a conversation with Marjorie Anderson, a global strategic community management professional, a proud logistician, ISTJ, a connector who strives to make others better, and a believer in Oxford comma. So, hello Marjorie.
Hi, Yuri. Thanks for having me.
Finally, I was waiting so much long for this conversation and now we're having it. So let's start from the first question. How do you choose what tab to close in a browser and what tab do you usually leave open?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question because having multiple tabs and too many tabs open gives me so much anxiety. If I haven't looked at something within the last hour, I close it. If it's not important to the work that I'm doing right now, I close it. I always leave my email open. I always leave my calendar open, and I always leave. We use Google Chat, so I always leave that open. Everything else, unless I'm working on it right now, closed. Otherwise, it drives me crazy.
What is the maximum amount of tabs you had ever opened together?
A couple of weeks ago, I had two browsers open. One had 17 tabs open and one had 23 tabs open. And it was near the end of my day before I even realized it because there was just so much going on. And I vowed to never let that happen again.
When you were closing them, did you check them or just closed them at all?
I checked them just to make sure that there wasn't something that I didn't need to bookmark or that I was working on that I needed to finish up. But yeah, it was a real quick scan though, because I just needed to get them closed.
By the way, as you mentioned bookmarking, how do you feel about bookmarking? How often do you coming back to bookmarks?
If I know that it's something that I will continuously have a conversation around, I'll bookmark it. Otherwise, if it's something that's shared with me on a drive or, really just good reference information, I might write it down to go back to at a later time if I think it's relevant. But unless it's something that is really important to the work that I'm doing, I don't bookmark it simply because I just don't want to take up that space and get um, and have a whole bunch of bookmarks that I'll have to look through and make it hard for me to find things. I would rather save that space for things that I need to immediately access, and then everything else I can just search.
Sometimes I'm calling it like rest in bookmarks.
Exactly.
So, Marjorie, let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who are they?
Wow, yeah. So my mom was the oldest of um, a military family. So my grandfather was in the military, and she was the firstborn. And then my father was also in the military. That's how they met because my grandparents were based. I can't remember. They were based at the time in Ohio, and so was my father, and they met while my grandfather was based there, and then um, they met, they fell in love, and then um, my grandparents moved, and my father was deployed
Hmm.
to another area, and so um, lo and behold, during that move, my mother found out that she was pregnant with me, but my father couldn't find my mom when he came back because I think they were in Kentucky or Germany at the time, my grandparents. And so, their lives went on. And then in 2015, I think it was either 2015 or 2016, my mom found my dad on Facebook and reconnected us. And so they're both really, really super smart people. Unfortunately, my mother passed away in 2016.
Hmm.
But a lot of the traits that my father has, I definitely see in me. He's one of his favorite shows is the Kennedy Honors, which is a show that honors and folks in entertainment and humanitarian efforts. And he just enjoys that show so much. And he's very smart and a little bit nerdy like myself. And my mom was the same way. So, they were really, and she was a bit of a free spirit. I did not necessarily get that from her. My younger sister did more so than I did, but um, there's some pieces of that kind of exist in me that try to get out sometimes.
What does it mean, a free spirit?
So my mother, she didn't really follow the rules, so to speak. She was a woman with her own mind and her own agenda and things that she wanted to do in life. And she was not really the conventional type of person. If my grandparents were to say, you're supposed to, grow up and get married and have a house, that was not the stuff that my mom was after. She was looking to figure out how she could live her best life. And, for all the things that she may or may not have done, the thing that I do envy about her is that she followed her passion and she followed her heart wherever that led, which meant she might end up living in a whole nother state for a while because that's what she felt called to do. So she really wasn't someone who followed anyone's set of rules if it didn't speak to her heart and her passion. So it got her in some situations, but I don't think that she had any regrets at the end of her days. So
yeah, I feel like if you are not following rules, there are always situations, but who tells that they're bad?
exactly.
So
Exactly.
what kind of free spirit do you have?
That's a great question because I think it took me a long time to figure that out, and I'm still figuring that out. When I was younger, I was very much, I'm the middle child of three kids that my mom had. And so I was very much interested in making people proud, right? So I wanted to do well in school to make my grandmother proud. She was a teacher, and she raised my grandmother, my grandfather raised my sisters and I. So I wanted to do well in school because I wanted to make her proud. I wanted to, make my friends proud of me. Like I wanted to do well at work, yes, because that's the thing to do, but I wanted to, excel in my work because that's the thing that you're supposed to do, right? And so, but lately, I've really been thinking about what it means to pursue happiness for oneself and what that looks like and what growth looks like. And for me, a free spirit means being okay with sometimes putting yourself first, because you can't. It's like that saying, you can't. Like when you're flying, they say put the oxygen mask on yourself before you
Yeah.
help your neighbor. So it's that same sort of thing. Like where in my life do I need to make sure that I am okay for me before I can make sure that I'm worried about what anybody else thinks. And I've really kind of started to abandon this idea of um, other people's opinions matter. To an extent, maybe, but
Yeah.
holistically, they don't. At the end of the day, you have to live your life and be happy with the outcome of that life. And when it's at the end of your time, are you going to look back and think about all the things you should have done but didn't because of what others thought of you? Or are you going to go ahead and do it, make some mistakes, and be like, you know what, that was a fun ride? And so I think that's where I'm at right now.
So you are in a place where you're doing mistakes.
Yeah, I think
Finally.
yeah. Yeah, finally, I'm a little bit older now, and you think that the older you are, the wiser you become. And I think that there's some truth to that, but I also think that there's some freedom in understanding that, yeah, sometimes when you get older, you start to think to yourself, it's I get this life once. I get to do this one time, and I need to make the most of it. And sometimes that requires that you let go of any preconceived notions about who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing, and figure it out from there.
Yeah. And tell me, how did you feel when you met your father?
It was so conflicting. I was very happy to have met him and to like know that he was there. But the conflicting part was that I didn't feel like I was ever missing a father figure in my life. My grandfather was an amazing man. He was very stern and, old fashioned in his ways because of the era that he grew up in. But I never felt like he didn't love me. I had uncles in my life who were just amazing people. And I never felt the absence of a positive male influence in my life. And so while I wondered who he was, and throughout my growing up, every now and then I would ask my mom about him, like I never felt like it was a missing piece. But then when I met him and I met his wife and I met, other brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and cousins that I had, and started to learn about them, then it started some of the things that really didn't connect as a young person for me started to connect, because that side of the family is where maybe I would get a trait from, or, if you saw a picture of my father and you see me, I look exactly like him. Like I look a little bit like my mom, but I am a carbon copy of my father, and all of the children that he had, we all look the same. And so, while it was really nice to know that he was there, I also felt like, but I didn't miss anything growing up. Like I never felt like I was not whole. And so having him in my life now, it just feels abundant, but I don't feel like I don't feel like I ever was missing anything. So it was just an enhancement to what already felt like a full life for me.
Yeah, so it feels like more an addition, not just filling gaps.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but it's a really great experience to have, I guess. And when you met all your other brothers and sisters and nephews, etc., did you have the big family meeting, or how did it happen?
It's been gradual, simply because, if I'm being transparent, there was always a fear or a concern for me that, like, I didn't want to also, I wanted to make sure that I continued to hold space for the family I always knew. And so I didn't want to have this rush of people who are like, we're your family now. Like, yes, you are my family, but I also have these dear people who I've grown up with, who, on my mom's side, that are my family, and they're all I know. And, at the age that I am now, it's still interesting to try to process. There are still folks that I haven't formally met yet. I met my father, one of my brothers, and my father's wife face to face back in 2019. I had just bought my house and they came down for Thanksgiving. And I met an aunt. And so which was his little sister. So there are a couple of people that I've been talking back and forth with via text or online, but haven't fully met yet. And I think I'm just not ready for that yet. Because I think there's just a whole lot of emotion that comes with that I'm not ready to process. But I am very grateful that they're there, and hope that when I am ready to make that transition, or to make that happen, that it's my heart feels just as full knowing that they're there than it will when I meet them. So.
And how does it feel for you to be a middle sister, like to have an older and younger sister?
It's so funny because I sometimes joke with my younger sister, and I used to joke with my older sister, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, um, that I felt like we were like I was like an outlier. Like my older sister was very, she was very beat of her own drum. Like she was rebellious, my older sister. And my younger sister, she was just very confident in who she is, and has always been and continues to be. And I draw some of that from her because, like, if I'm having a bad day, I'll go to her. But like you hear stories about people who are middle children and how they act out, like they don't feel like they've got enough attention. Like me, I am so chill and even keeled. Like that doesn't, like, I don't, not much bothers me. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that I am an introvert or my zodiac sign, or what, but I'm just, there's not much that gets to me. And so, like, growing up, I was an easy kid. I went to school, I did my homework. I had a few friends, but I was never interested in going out. Like, I felt like the exception to the rule being a middle child, because that's generally not how middle children technically behaviorally present. I don't know whose rule that is, but that's what I've heard. But yeah, it was definitely interesting, just because my older sister and my younger sister have such dynamic personalities.
And you told that you were an easy child, but what was the toughest thing you've done as an easy child?
Ah, so toughest in terms of like
Something crazy, something like
something
not
crazy.
something what is not usually easy children does.
Oh, so when I was 19, I took a 2-week trip to Canada by myself to meet a friend that I had met online. So I like, had talked to them over the course of a semester, and then was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go to Canada for 2 weeks and hang out with them. And my family was like, what? And so that's what I did. That's probably the craziest thing that I've done. And that was very out of character for me at the time. But like now, I would absolutely do that stuff because it's just like, what else am I going to do? So if I want to go on a trip, I'm going to go on a trip. But for someone who was considered shy and, um, by the book, like that was very out of character for me. So I think that's the craziest thing.
How did you feel after this trip?
Um, it felt good to know that I could like do something on my own.
Yeah.
But it took a while for me to do something like that again. When I was 28, I had decided that I no longer wanted to live in my hometown. And I was like, I'm moving to Long Island, New York. Bye. And my family was like, oh, you are. And so, but I think that was just like the beginning of the journey of really figuring out, like, how do I navigate this life without being under the assumption that everything that I do is supposed to be to the approval of other people. And so I don't think that if I had not have taken that journey at 19, I don't know that I would have made that move at 28.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of stirred something in me, and really kind of set the path for how I would decide how to make the most of this life.
Do you take these decisions quickly?
Not necessarily. They seem quickly to others because I've planned them in my head for months.
Yeah.
And so for others, when I finally make the announcement that, hey, I'm doing this thing, it seems sudden. But I've got a plan. I've been making a plan for a while, and when I'm ready to execute is when I usually tell people, simply because I just don't want, I'm very cautious about letting other opinions affect a decision that I've made. I need to make sure that the decision that I've made is mine, and that it's sound and that I feel good about it, before I share any plans with anybody else. Because for a while, I was very impressionable. Someone could very well say, I don't think that's a good idea. And I would squash it because I'm like, oh, if someone doesn't think that's a good idea, then it probably isn't a good idea. But it very well
Yeah.
may have been the best idea for me. They just didn't like it. And so, um, unless it's going to directly affect someone else, I don't share plans until I'm ready to execute them.
And how do you feel about giving or receiving an advice?
I am so I don't mind receiving advice. I think that in general it comes from a good place. What I have an issue with is asking for it. I just don't want to be a bother to people. I always invite people to ask me if they need help or if they need advice or if they need a listening ear. I will 100% always say, whatever you need, I'm here. But I don't offer that opportunity to other people because I make the assumption that, they've got other stuff going on in their life. They don't have the time to sit and listen to my woes. And so, but if, in conversation something comes out and they want to offer, some wisdom, I'm open to it because I don't know everything. And sometimes I may be looking at a situation from a very skewed lens. And so if someone can help me see that a little bit more clearly and make some decent decisions, I'm 100% open to that.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're having these conversations, there are different types of people. Some people would say like, oh yeah, it's easy, just do that. And they don't care about anything.
Right.
And other people will just ask questions. So you will have this decision by yourself, not really being influenced by them. But so it's kind of different types of, this having and receiving advices. So,
Yeah.
and Marjorie, what was the first memory? No, not like that. What is the first memory that comes to your mind right now from your childhood?
I think as weird as this sounds, the first memory from my childhood is the first time that I got a booster shot from some immunizations as a kid. It was the last round of shots I had to get before I could start school. And so I was probably 5, and I remember my grandmother taking us to the doctor. And the reason that I remember this is because me and my sister got our shots at the same time. My younger sister, she's only 16 months younger than me. And so she hated going to the doctor and getting shots. Like they would always have to bring an additional nurse in to hold her still because she couldn't do it. And so I remember that day because she was just having a really hard time that day, and they had to bring some doctors in to just hold her still to get the shot. And then I remember us coming home, and we took a nap because, after a day like that, you have to take a nap. But I think that's the earliest childhood memory that I have. And just my grandmother just being she just was always so very caring and loving, and made sure that we were taken care of and that we were okay. Yeah, I think that's the first one that I can recall.
And how did you feel by taking a shot?
I mean, it hurt. Like, don't get me wrong, but I was less, which again speaks to the type of spirit my younger sister has. I was less resistant to getting shots than my sister was. Like, I was very tense about it. Definitely had anxiety about it, but was definitely less resistant than my younger sister was.
Yeah, I'm just asking because, me, myself, I can even faint while having it, even though I know it's like, it's just okay. It's just a small shot, but like, nope. Out. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's even now, sometimes when I have to get blood drawn, like I'll know it's coming and I will watch until she's ready to put the needle in and then I'll look away. But
Yeah,
like if I'm like, just get it over with, just breathe through it and it'll take 2 seconds and you're done. And so that's kind of how I get through it now.
just don't tell me about it. Just do your thing.
Right. Right. Don't count down, just do
Yeah.
it so that I can go on about my day.
Yeah, there are really some types of doctors who like, okay, now I'm preparing a shot. I'm opening a needle. 3, 2, 1. Nope,
Like, you are
thank you.
going to make me faint. Just do it.
Yeah. Once you shared that you have a ton of books to reread. So, how many books have you ever reread?
Um, there are probably, I have a bunch of books. I don't even know how many books I have because I keep buying them. The problem is I keep buying them, even though I haven't read the to be read pile on my nightstand. But I think there's probably a handful of books that I've reread that really just stick with me. There are a couple about friendship there's one about friendship that a friend of mine bought me at the beginning of the pandemic. That's just a beautiful read. It's called Big Friendship. There is one about I think it's about user design. It's called You Look Like a Thing and I Love You. So that one's a good one. And then there are a couple of other books that I just can't get enough of. Some fiction books from back in my youth that, not too young, but when I was in my 20s, that I read that were really interesting to me, that I've reread a couple of times. But things that are easy reads that just help me unwind a little bit. One of the things that's interesting is that if there's an area of conflict in a book or a movie that causes anxiety for me, I'm like, I can't finish this yet. And so sometimes I'll walk away from it, even though I enjoy reading, especially if it's a fiction book. But and I'm currently trying to get through the WeWork book. There's a book about WeWork. I am fascinated with that story. It's just how like the fall of WeWork happened and like it just blows my mind. So I'm working through that and I'm sure I'll read that again. But yeah, there's maybe 5 or 6 books that I could read over and over and over again. It's not many, but some that are just really just nostalgic and feel good to me.
How do you choose which book you want to reread?
I choose it by the way that it makes me feel. So if I know that it's a book that evoked a certain emotion in me, whether that is empathy, whether that is love, whether that is excitement, whether that is horror, like for scary books, if there's something that continues just to draw me to that story or the characters in that story, if it's a fictional book, then that's how I choose whether or not to reread it. It's lots of times I'll read a book and it'll be on a rainy or a cold or a cloudy day, and it's something that has brought me comfort in that day. And if I connect that book to that feeling of comfort, regardless of the subject matter, I'll go back and reread it.
If you have a fiction book and a movie, what comes first for you?
The book. I have to read the book first before I watch the movie, and then I debate in my head how accurate the movie was. Or I'll reach out to someone who I know has also read the book and seen the movie and be like, "Can you believe?" Yeah, I have to read the book before I see the movie. There was a book called The Circle, and it reminded by, I think his name is Dave Eggers, and it very much reminded me of like big tech companies and the inner workings of these tech companies, and that's what it was meant to do. Like, it was very like Google/Facebook reminiscent of like how their campuses are set up and how things happen inside those four walls, right? And so I read that book, and I've read that book 3 times, and then I saw the movie, and the whole time I was like, they left this part out, they left that part out, they left this part out. But yeah, I definitely go to the book first.
What is your favorite podcast?
My favorite podcast is a podcast called Good Life Project by Jonathan Fields. It is very reminiscent of this that you're doing here. He brings people on and he talks about just very he has very honest and open conversations with people. They could be authors, they could be scientists, they could be other podcasters, but these are people who are really kind of embodying or making a way for others to be able to find out what it means to live a good life through their work. And those episodes are usually an hour long, and his favorite question to ask at the end of every podcast is, if I could pose to you the question of what is your definition of a good life, what would that look like? And the answers that these folks come up with are just beautiful, beautiful answers. And it gives you an opportunity to see these folks as human. They may very well be New York Times bestselling authors or, Nobel Prize winning scientists, but he opens these people up in such a way that it's just really beautiful to hear their stories. It's a wonderful, lovely, uplifting podcast. So I've been listening to that podcast for, maybe the past 4 or 5 years. It's pretty great.
Oh, wow. After you described it, I feel like I will definitely check this podcast because it sounds totally my way. I just love people's stories, and yeah, because we always have these titles, we always have our jobs, but who are we inside? If anybody cares at all, let's talk human,
Exactly. I think you would absolutely love it. I think it's right up your alley.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing it. I'm going up to there. And once you shared that listening to brown noise helps you to be more productive. So why brown, not white noise?
So there were some studies, and I haven't really dived too deep into it, but there were some studies that so white noise helps me sleep. What it does is it helps me kind of drown out anything in the background so that I can rest. But there's something about brown noise that supposedly taps into your brain that allows you to be more productive. So I used to be able to listen to music or podcasts or just have something in the background, but it distracts me. But brown noise, I think, is at a lower frequency than, or maybe it's at some frequency. It might be lower than white noise, so that it doesn't lull you to sleep, but it does keep you alert enough to be able to concentrate on something. So if I've got a lot of stuff on my plate or a big day ahead where I know I'm going to need to concentrate really well, and I know that if I put on a podcast or music, it's going to distract me, I have a Bluetooth speaker on my desk, and I will connect my phone to it and put brown noise on, and the amount of work that I can get done in the course of an hour versus without it, I amaze myself sometimes. So but it's good because it helps me focus. I think that there is probably some undiagnosed ADHD that I have, uh, because otherwise I'm all over the place.
And how do you feel while listening to it? I mean, except for being productive.
Like it feels like, for me, it feels like I am wrapped in, gosh, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like I'm encased in a bubble,
Hmm.
and there's no other distractions. That is how my brain feels when I'm listening to brown noise and working. It feels like any distraction has been removed, even though if I look to my left, there's a window and I can see outside and there's birds. If it's raining, I can see that it's raining, or if someone's mowing their grass, I can still hear that. But brown noise allows me to just zone in on the task at hand, and not think about anything else. It really just kind of tricks my brain into staying focused on the task.
Have you tried using headphones with brown noise?
I use both headphones. Like if I really, really need to zone out, I'll use headphones. If I think that I'll be fine without them, then I'll use my Bluetooth speaker. But 9 times out of 10, I use my headphones.
Got it. Once you shared a message, it was like, an exciting day. I'm honored to be attending the virtual wedding of my friend. So, virtual wedding, I've never heard about that. Tell me more about that.
Um, so I have a friend who, it was during the pandemic, and he was getting married. Him and his fiance, um, they couldn't do it like in 2020 when the world shut down. But they still wanted to do it in 2021, but they were understanding that there were still restraints and they didn't want to risk getting anybody sick. So what they did was they had their ceremonies, beautiful ceremony, at a specific location. And they sent out invitations to people to watch it be live cast. And they had someone help with like production. I think there was a drone. Like it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing to be a part of, and a wonderful way to include people who were very special in their lives to them, understanding that that COVID was still a very real thing that was affecting people. And so it was really beautifully done. They're really resourceful people, so they figured out how to make it really happen and make it really beautiful. But it was just neat to watch. I just sat at my dining room table and watch them exchange vows. It was a beautiful thing.
So it was more like a movie.
It felt very much like a movie. The quality of the video was beautiful. The venue that they had it at was beautiful. They were outside. It was a beautiful sunny day. It was just it 100% felt like I was watching a movie scene.
And were you possible to talk or to share something or to have conversations with other participants?
There was a chat, and so we were able to share well wishes and things like that and talk with one another in the chat. They really thought it through really, really well and executed it pretty flawlessly. So it was it was it was almost like being there. Of course we weren't because it was virtual, but there was an ability for us to spend time even afterwards with the bride and groom, in like in a chat room if we could. But I wasn't able to do that. I had something else that I had to tend to. But yeah, they really figured it out, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah, it's totally different experience from what we usually have in Zoom and all the stuff. So
Yeah.
sounds really nice. And yeah, I'm so jealous for you to having things that. But thank you very much for sharing your feelings, because it's definitely interesting thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how often do you have a clean to-do list?
I try I try to have a clean to-do list weekly. I try not to carry over too much into the next week if I can help it. Um, because of the way I like to stay organized, I have a master task list, which lists out all of the things that I know I need to pay attention to. And from that master task list, I create a weekly to-do list. So that master task list will always be that list. I will pull things from that list that I can do within the coming week or that I should do within the coming week. And as things continue to pop up through meetings and stuff like that, I'll add those to the master task list. And then based off of what I know my deliverables are, things that are a priority, I will adjust that to-do list for the following week based off of what's on that master task list. So it's never fully empty, but what it is I try to make sure that the tasks associated with the following week are new where I can versus me carrying it over unless there are other dependencies that are out of my control.
But do you mean that master's list is never fully empty, but weekly lists might be?
Yeah. So the master task list will always have stuff on it because there's always something to get done. But my weekly to-do list, I try to clear that out by the end of the week if I can, unless there are dependencies that are out of my control. But usually I try to cross off as much as I can off of that weekly to-do.
Do you celebrate yourself after crossing all tasks for the week?
I don't, because there's always something to do. So I'm like, well, at least that's done. On to the next thing. And so that's generally how that goes.
What is your favorite game?
So if we're talking like card games, I love a good game of Uno. I grew up, my mom taught me and my sisters how to play that, and that is just one of my favorite things to play. I have recently gotten back into video games. My sister, my younger sister, and my older sister, they were both avid gamers. And so there's a game called Soul Calibur that's kind of like Mortal Kombat. That's amazing. That's my favorite game. And I recently found one called Forspoken that is it's a role-playing game. It's kind of like a Final Fantasy sort of thing. And I've really gotten into that. So, and then, if I'm really, really bored, solitaire, I have solitaire on my phone. That always keeps me busy.
It works always.
Either that or like hidden object games if I just need to pass some time. Like I'll spend an hour doing that, but other than that, that's about where I'm at.
And how do you find time to play those bigger games?
I try to structure my day and create some work-life balance in the best way that I can. So once I'm logged off of my computer for the day, I don't have work email, I don't have work chat on my phone. Like if it's on fire, text me. Otherwise, I'm available tomorrow morning. And so I try to leave space in the evening right before bedtime to do that stuff. So I know that if I time box stuff like that, I won't spend hours and hours and hours doing it. So, I'll cook dinner, I'll, watch a little TV, I'll read a book, and then in the last hour or hour and a half of my evening, if I feel like it, then I'll carve out some time to play a game. And then because sleep is important to me, I absolutely know that if I do it close to bedtime, I will stop when it's time for me to lay down and go to sleep. And then on the weekends, I'm always there's always an errand to run or something to do around the house. So, if I've got some time, I'll spend an hour or two just to unwind and allow myself the grace of having some mindless time. But yeah, I try to structure it in that way.
Yeah, and talking about cooking, what do you like to cook the most?
I like to cook pasta a lot. I also like to cook ramen. Like during the pandemic, I figured out how to make ramen from scratch, and so I love to make that and add kimchi to it. I love that. And also my favorite thing to cook is soup and chili. But
Mhm.
when it's warm outside, you can't really say, I'm gonna have a hot cup of soup. Like nobody wants that. But when it's fall and winter and the weather is colder, my favorite thing to cook are soups and chilies just because they're cozy and they bring comfort. And so yeah.
Have you ever cooked sushi?
I have not. I want to learn how to make sushi, but I have not learned that yet. I'm afraid that I'll get it wrong or that I'll buy like not sushi grade fish and get sick or something like that. So but I want to learn.
And what are your favorite sushi?
I love a spicy crunchy tuna roll. And I also enjoy there's this place near my house where they sell a king crab leg tempura roll,
Mm.
and it's amazing. It's so good. But yeah, if I can't think of anything else, I'll get a spicy crunchy tuna roll. It's my go-to.
Do you enjoy more to go and eat it there or to order it?
Um, I like to order it and go pick it up and bring it home and eat it. If I'm by myself. If I am with others, I enjoy that experience with other people. But if it's just me, I'll just go get it and bring it home and watch TV and drink sake by myself and eat sushi.
Have a great sushi experience. I totally understand you, even though I also like sushi, but we're always ordering it. I don't know why, but it's just sounds more cozy. You
It
can just
does.
eat, you can just watch a movie or just sit in your place, like nobody's around.
Exactly. And then when you're done, you can just kind of sit back and relax. You don't have to worry about anything.
Nobody's waiting for you to go away finally.
Right. Right. You don't have to wait 10 years for the check to come. Yeah, all of that.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And once you shared, it was a year ago that 2 years ago you told that you don't get why people like iced coffee, and 1 year ago you changed your mind, and you told that be willing to change your mind when presented with new information is okay. So, what was the last time you changed your mind when you've been presented with new information?
Oh, that's such a great question. I used to, I don't know if this qualifies, but I used to very much think that um, tattoos were unprofessional and that they shouldn't be seen in the workplace, right? That was just kind of the mindset that, very, very early, like I was young when I started working in a corporate environment, like 21, 22. And that was always the thing that they told you, tattoos are not acceptable, tattoos are not acceptable. And then the older that I got and the more that I started seeing people wearing, showing up to work as their authentic selves. Like the fact that I have a tattoo doesn't change the fact that I'm highly qualified to do my job and that I can do it well and that I can communicate with other folks. And like it changes none of that. All it does is it changes the appearance of my skin. And so I really started thinking deeply about what I was taught to believe was professional versus what that actually means and what that's rooted in. And so over the course of the past, I would say 10 years, I've really been unraveling that thinking because it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It never did make sense.
Yeah.
And so I have been showing up as authentically as I can, even to the point where I hadn't worn my natural hair simply because of preference up until I would say around 2016, 2015, 2016 is when I started wearing my natural hair. And it took a lot for me to feel comfortable in that because it was something that I had never done before. It doesn't change the fact that I am highly qualified again to do my job, and that, you know, it doesn't change anything about me. It just changes the way my hair looks.
Yeah.
And knowing that there were laws that and workplace policies that were in place, that not necessarily at my workplace, but at lots of other workplaces, that were prohibited, you know, people of color from wearing their natural hair, from Black people from wearing their natural hair to work. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. And so I have really started challenging the way that I think about how people are quote unquote supposed to show up in any given space. Like, at the end of the day, if we're really going to support the way that folks show up and be advocates of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how can you not allow people to show up? I mean, no, they can't come to work in their pajamas, but who cares if they have a nose ring? Who cares if, you know, they have purple hair? Who cares if they have who cares if they are capable of doing the job and they're being productive and they're doing the thing that you hired them to do? Who cares about all of that superficial stuff? And who are we to say that it is or isn't appropriate? And so that was really something for me that I had internalized based off of messages that I had received coming up in the world. And I had to dismantle that. And it's freeing to be able to do that. But like, that's the thing that comes to mind when I think about changing my mind when presented with different information, right? The more you learn, like, the better off you are. Maya Angelou has a quote, the once you know better, you do better, right? And so we have to do better.
Yeah, totally. And you know, I've seen sometimes like kind of acceptable folks acting weird, and like it's kind of okay-ish, which is really strange. But yeah, I totally understand what you are talking about. And do you have a tattoo?
I have many. I have, well, not many. I've got one on this arm that's visible. I've got this one that's visible. I just got one on my left shoulder. I have one on my right shoulder, two on my back, one on my left ankle, and hopefully I'll get more. But yeah, I've got a few.
What is your favorite one?
My favorite one is the one that I just recently got. It's a hard one. Like, they're both on this arm. So there's this one on my left forearm, inside forearm, that is the tree of life. And then it's got the sun and moon above it. And right above that are the words, "Maybe you are magic." There's a Frida Kahlo quote that's from. And then this one is a large mandala with a scarab in the middle. It's a beautiful piece. But those are my two favorite.
For how long you've been thinking before making this last one?
The last one, I'd been thinking about it for a couple of months. The first one I ever got was an impulse tattoo. I was going with a friend. I was in my 20s. She was going to get a piercing, and she was like, "Come with me." And so after work, we went. And she's like, "Well, while you're here, you might as well get a tattoo." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that." And the tattoo artist was like, "While you're here, you might as well get a tattoo." And so I was easily convinced. And so that one was right on the spot. But I think that each one after that represents a moment in time in my life. And so they all hold meaning, even though the actual tattoo is because I like the way it looks. The story behind what brought me to that tattoo is very meaningful. So, like the one on my ankle, I got that one right as I was getting ready to move out of state. I lived in Columbus, Ohio at the time, and I was getting ready to move to New York. And that was a transition in my life. And so I got that tattoo to mark that transition. And I think each one of the tattoos that I have, in some way, shape, or form, besides the one that I got as an impulse, marks a transition in my life. So, yeah, it kind of helps tell the story, helps remind me of the story of where I've been and where I'm going.
And what meaning did you put into this first tattoo?
The one that I got on a dare.
Yes, exactly. You chose it. So what was the process
I
behind?
did. Yeah, it was it was a butterfly, and I think that was really, if I really think back to what that meant, that was really sort of a discovery, of it was the beginning of the discovery of who I am as a person. That was me starting to peel away the layers of other people's opinions and other people's expectations and other people's um, wants for my life, and me really starting to say, this is what I want for my life, right? Like, because had I left it up to the opinions of other people, I never would have gotten it. But I made that choice that day. And for me, that was just the beginning of that piece of self-discovery and understanding, and a journey, a lifelong journey of understanding who I am, what I want, where I want to go in life, and seeing what comes next.
You know, it's really interesting. I've read a quote today in the morning about the butterfly, and it was like, a butterfly can't see the beauty of its wings. So, like, you are a and it was a quote like, you are a butterfly, so just know that you have a beautiful wings.
That is really beautiful. That's really beautiful. That gave me goosebumps to hear you say that.
Yeah, exactly. When I was reading it, I was like, but really, that's kind of what many people suffer from. Like, we always doing some stuff, and even in the community world, yes, even though I promised not to use the word community, but still, people are helping each other and forgetting about themselves, about their wings.
They
So
are.
this story was your tattoo just reminded me this. So
Oh, lovely. That's so lovely.
and once you shared that you are a big fan of pen and paper. So what is your brainstorming process with pen and paper look like?
I usually take out a journal and start writing down the things that are in my head. So it's a brain dump. If I come up with an idea or something that that just kind of comes to me, like something that I need to make sure that I remember, I will sit down with a pen and a paper and write it out. And I have a huge collection of journals, some that I write in, some that I don't. But there's one that I have that is strictly for ideas. To flesh those ideas out more, I then use a different journal to solidify, make a plan, really flesh those ideas out. And then once I'm comfortable with that, then I can transfer them to, the computer or a Miro board or something like that, depending on what it is that I'm brainstorming. But even if I put it in my phone, like if I'm getting ready to go to sleep and I'm like, oh, that thing, I might make a note, but in the morning I will come to my ideas notebook and write that down. It just simply helps me with retention. It helps me remember where that information is. It lessens the chance that I will lose it. And it just helps me remember, possibly even where I was when that thought came up. So, yeah, it's really important for me to continue to use pen and paper, even though everyone's like, just download an app. I will always be old school in that way.
And what is the process between having an idea and acting on it looks like for you?
A lot of procrastination.
Exactly.
Yeah. I may think of something and I am one of those people that needs to weigh all the pros and cons before I can act. And so I think about risks. I think about, well, is somebody else doing this, and which way are they doing it? How do you add value if you decide you're going to do it? What's your spin on it? Is this something really that the world needs? And so I go through all of this questioning in my head and on paper about whether or not to move forward with something. And then at the end of the day, if I can't poke enough holes in it to make me doubt its value, then I move. If it still just doesn't feel right, I let it sit. And sometimes I go back to it and sometimes I don't. But that's usually, but it's probably a longer process than it needs to be. Sometimes it can take months, sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it's days, but depending on what it is and how big the idea is. But I make sure that I poke as many holes in it as I possibly can. And then depending on how big the idea is or what it is, I vet it with other folks and then make a decision as to whether or not I want to move forward.
And you share that it take different time. So how do you feel about time?
Overall, I'm like, what is time? I also am very cognizant that time moves really fast. I've become aware of that a lot over the course of the past couple of years, and I try not to sit on my hands too much in regards to time, because we just don't have a lot of it. And when I think about, I just had a birthday that passed, and when I think about my age now and how quickly I got here, like, how quickly am I going to let the next few years pass? And it's just, I don't want to waste any more of it. I want to make decisions as quickly as I can where it makes sense, and I want to do things that feel good, as long as they don't bring harm to another person, and because we don't have a whole lot of time, and we should 100% spend what time we do have here on this earth in joy and in peace and in happiness and in service to others where we can be.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing that. And Marjorie, I really wish to have the sky's limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Hershey's or pancakes?
Pancakes.
Video game or book?
Book.
What are your favorite color and song?
My favorite color is black, and my favorite song is Closer by a artist called Guapel.
If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Invisibility.
Who do you learn from in the community world? Name just one person.
Shannon Emery.
Name two people whose community life journey you are happy to hear about.
Nikki Thibodeau and Shayna Summers.
Is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
My favorite snack.
What is your favorite snack?
Cheese.
All cheese or some sort of cheese?
I like cheddar cheese squares.
You just reminded me of this Chip and Dale movie, like cheese. I don't know why, just pictures going back from my childhood. So, okay, Marjorie, I'm so happy that I finally could talk to you, and you are so open and kind and really thoughtful person, and everything you were sharing with me, you could see I was always laughing, and it's not like, it's like you're saying some fun stories or all the stuff, but I was always happy, and I felt happy during all this conversation. So thank you very much for bringing this joy to me. And yeah, it's so nice to get to know you as a human. It's just the first volume. we'll definitely have much more conversations, and I would definitely invite you there. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for this amazing conversation.
Thank you for inviting me into the conversation, Yuri. It was great to sit and talk with you today.
And see you in the community world.
You too.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button on 5 stars and share it with your friends. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.